Let's bring in Publicity Secretary of the All Progressives Congress for more on this development. Mr. Felix Morka, thanks for joining us on the program this evening. We've seen what appears an overwhelming support from the National Assembly as regards Mr. President's proclamation. But I'm sure you're also hearing certain reservation as to the way and manner the lawmakers went about this. A section of Nigerians were expecting that this would be put to actual electronic voting, knowing who is voting for what. But what we saw instead was a voice vote. How's your party reacting to this concern?
The All Progressives Congress is really pleased to see the National Assembly come together, to see a multi-partisan approval of the proclamation of emergency rule in Rivers State. Now, that is what you expect in a democracy. This is the National Assembly that is comprised of not just members of our party, but also members of the opposition, but who decided to put the national interests above partisanship, who decided to say, you know what, the people of Rivers State deserve to have their peace. And the national assets that are located in that state deserve to be protected. And that's all the president is seeking to do, is to protect, the people of Rivers State, to ensure that governance is extended to them, but also to, protect critical assets that are in Rivers State. Because unfortunately, the political circumstances that have been created in the state didn't quite give any confidence to the government and to Nigerians that, we will not see a rapid deterioration of the situation in that state.
Part of the recommendations we're hearing from the National Assembly is the need to get the warring factions together back on the table to have conversation. What role do you see the federal government play in all of this?
Look, now we have at least some structure of government in Rivers State. Yes, I think that every Nigerian should hope and forward to, some rapprochement on a part of the political actors so that we can restore some level of, good governance in that state. Prior to this, we must not forget the context, what led us to this point, where, the governor of Rivers State, just barely a couple of months into his administration, was seeking to oust the Speaker of the House of Assembly. And when that didn't, when the Assembly didn't give in to that, he literally stripped them of every financial support and then proceeded to destroy the complex, the House of Assembly complex in Port Harcourt. Now, when he did that day, Governor Fubara destroyed government in that state. Governor Fubara, subverted democracy when he attempted to abolish an arm of government, the legislature. You don't do that. Democracy, requires the coexistence of the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. So what he did was, a frontal attack on democracy. And that's exactly what the Supreme Court said. And he created the conditions, which is why, as far as I'm concerned, he is the author of the extreme events.
Mr. Morka, let me bring in a chieftain of the People's Democratic Party, Sowunmi, who joins us live from our studio in Abuja. Mr. Sowunmi, thank you for joining us on the program. I'm sure that you're listening to the conversation thus far. Your party rejected the declaration of state of emergency in Rivers State, saying the president lacks the authority to suspend a democratically elected governor. It turns out the National Assembly thinks differently, snubbing the call to reject it. What did you think happened today at the National Assembly?
I think that once again, the National Assembly of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, this particular assembly has disgraced itself, has betrayed the Nigerians, have let the people of goodwill down, and have given us the impression that indeed, away from our suspicion, Nigeria is now running a civilian dictatorship with no respect for the extant provisions of the law, and that whatever we do, we all now have to find a way to preserve the sanity of ourselves pending when we can wait out this period that is presently ongoing. I say this because I've listened to Felix, my friend, speak, and I would have just asked him one simple question. If Felix Morka were the president, and this situation in Rivers that had critical players in the governor, yes, on one side, and the minister of the FCT on the other side, playing these games for close to 2 years, that is the best that the Morka would do would be to rely on a law that is not fully tested, which is the section of the Constitution that allows the president to declare a state of emergency, where, yes, if we go back to the court, we may try to say, let us put a limit, a limit to the extension or the elasticity of the application of that law. But that in the strictest of sense, nobody will be happy that you have removed this, you have suspended a governor without the law giving you those kinds of powers. You have dismantled and suspended the organ in a democracy that even tells you that this is not a dictatorship, which is the House of Assembly. There was no reason for them to suspend them, assuming your reason for suspending the governor was right.
Mr. Sowunmi.
And then you have gone now to say, let me land, please. You have gone now to say, how do we feel about it? Let me tell you how we feel about it. We reject it in its totality. We disagree with the president, and we think that the president is wrong.
Mr. Sowunmi.
We think that if he will be the president that people expect
allow me to quickly follow up with some of the thoughts that you have expressed, because the position of the PDP is out there, it's in the public. So I thought that we could, narrow this down to some more specific thoughts, right? Your comment on the National Assembly sounds like an indictment also on PDP members in the Assembly, because what we saw today looked like an overwhelming support, right, across board. Now, President Tinubu earlier today acknowledged the lawmakers' diligent review of what he called classified security briefings, underscoring the urgent need for intervention to prevent further escalation in Rivers State. Could this mean that the lawmakers are privy to certain details that pertain to national security that you aren't aware of?
When democracy was envisaged, the idea was that the people will own the suffrage to pick their leaders. And once they have exercised that right in the democracy, and the election has gone through all the review process, and it has been established to be able to stand, no decent Democrat will happily agree that the next best thing that you can do is give powers that do not exactly exist in the Constitution to a state capture in the hands of a clear civilian dictator who can then ram it round the National Assembly. And every time you have an assembly, having nobody with a dissenting voice, you have to accept that they are either scared or they are cajoled or they are over-influenced by other things that we do not know. But certainly, the vast majority of Nigerians cannot disagree with a decision. And then you will say, just because a handful of men who are now obviously unaware and incapable of living the duties and the responsibility of what it means to be the stabilization force in a democracy have agreed with him. Kumbaya if you want. We don't have any way to tell him to reverse himself now, since he has been given the blank check to tomorrow morning wake up and declare a state of emergency in Kaduna. If he likes, declare the state of emergency everywhere where the opposition is, forgetting that we can always show you how those things even degenerated. It degenerated because every other president that has ruled this country, to Jonathan, even to President Muhammadu Buhari, would have stepped in early, would have insisted that that behavior is not acceptable in his country, would have done something fast, and would not have allowed a situation where democracy will now be undermined and subverted with military intervention. And those who say it was done in Obasanjo's term, let me land. Those who say it was done in Obasanjo's term must understand that democracy must continually be improving.
Mr. Sowunmi, I'm sure you know that this is a conversation, right? So when I intend to interject, I expect that you give me room to follow up on the thoughts you've expressed. And you are aware that Mr. Morka is also on this conversation. So it's important that both of you have a fair share of timing, right? So I'm not rudely interjecting you. I respect your opinion. But let me bring Mr. Morka into this conversation. State capture, illegality, unconstitutional, that's the way PDP sees this. Is your party under compulsion? Are you compelled to convince the PDP, to come to your side of understanding as regards Mr. President's decision?
No, first of all, my very good friend Segun, casting aspersion on the National Assembly, and I'm glad you pointed out that he has members of his party who were elected and who are in that assembly and who participated today in the overwhelming outcome we witnessed in the National Assembly. You can, if you are suggesting that all of your members are people who are without any type of dignity even, or the commitment to our democracy, then I think you should recall them. They have no business being in the assembly. But I disagree with you. These are citizens who were presented with compelling information and evidence of a clear and present threat to the peace and security of Rivers State, and who I think exercised their authority as assembly members to vote in support of the proclamation that the president has issued. You see, we can try to politicize this, but that's not, it's not right. We should focus on the issues. Look, my dear friend Segun, including all of the leaders of the PDP, were aware of the origins of this matter. I didn't quite see any major initiative taken by the PDP to, mediate the conflict at the onset. They simply sat back and watched the matter escalate. The president that they speak to attempted to intervene. He called all the parties into the villa, and they had a meeting, had an agreement, which were to be implemented. But they all went back to Rivers State and reneged on that agreement. So you can't really blame the president for not intervening. He intervened, but the key actors, especially the government, simply didn't follow through with the understanding that we thought they had reached at the villa. But look, I am not aware of any similar initiative by the PDP, especially considering that the government in Rivers State was a government of the PDP. So they should have been the ones swinging and seeking to diffuse this madness that we have witnessed over the last couple of years. And right now, there's no responsible president. And you asked me if I was president, which I'm not, how I would deal with it. If I am presented with the compelling circumstances, the extraordinary circumstances that we have seen in Rivers State, look, I think that the decision this president has made is one that any reasonable, right-thinking president would make to avert further deterioration in that situation and to protect our national assets. Segun will agree that cannot simply, for the sake of politics and partisanship, allow anyone or any group of persons, especially when the governor appears to be endorsing or promoting, the threat to violence in the state with his comments just before this proclamation was issued. I think that the president has done the right thing. The National Assembly has acted responsibly and, as expected in a democracy. And I think that, I am looking forward. My party is looking forward to, greater peace in the
And
in
hear
the
me,
state
Mr.
of,
Morka. We have just about 5 more minutes to go. Mr. Sowunmi, no immediate reversal on the part of the president, no rejection by the National Assembly. I think that the other demand on the table from the coalition of opposition parties made through the former vice president today would be judicial intervention. Will the PDP or this new coalition be taking the president to court? What is your next line of action?
It will be considered. And thankfully, the PDP has been a party that has been in charge of this country before. And therefore, we know that someday, sometime, the man in charge now will get up. And hopefully, by 2027, he'll be gone. Usually, leaders are very careful to supplant and destroy the democratic institution because we know how hard it is to build. There was a time in this country where the far end of the Northwest was under significant crisis, the type of crisis that would have warranted or necessitated a state of emergency and the destruction of democratic institutions and democratic structures. We being far more democratic and far more reasonable with managing power, we stopped short of doing that. Of course, if the National Assembly has given the power to declare a state of emergency, let us just pray that the National Assembly will not give him the power to convert himself into a life president even without an election. Of course, we will figure out how to take it to court. We'll put ourselves together and let us hope that the Supreme Court this time around will not delve into issues that are not before them like they did in the situation. Because I need to make 2 points clear. The judgment that they relied on, which is the judgment that was talking about appropriation, it is extremely offensive that the Federal High Court would think that appropriation, which is supposed to be a residual state High Court issue, will now be the reasons why they are talking about it. It is even more offensive that the tenor of the 27 men that have not been arrested and was not before the Supreme Court, they delved into it. In any case, when the Supreme Court had given a verdict and the governor has said he will recommend, why then did you remove the State Assembly members? Or could they also have done something wrong? I think what has happened here is a desire to own rivers, to take the resources of rivers, and to plan for the future that only God Almighty, who is the giver of life, will know if will be available for us. As far as we are concerned, we reject it. We call on the international community to reject it. We do not accept that a civilian dictatorship will be forced on the people of Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Quickly, Mr. Sowunmi, I was hoping we could get your reaction to the announcement by the former Vice President Atiku Abubakar today, talking about the birth of the coalition of opposition ahead of 2027. You know, it sounds good until consensus has to be reached on which candidate to support. What's the strategy this time?
Never mind what the strategy will be. No decent Nigeria can watch our country become a place where just one individual who could turn over and interfere with the House of Assembly in Lagos to get them to upturn themselves and then go to Rivers and declare a state of emergency, which he didn't declare in Lagos. We are now stuck with having to figure out how to ensure that the entire people of Nigeria must be rescued from this dictatorship, and rescue we will by the grace of God.
It sounds like you avoided my question entirely, because you would need a strategy to achieve your plan and the kind of output that you desire.
There's no point.
I asked that question, Mr. Sowunmi, because just last year, I mean 2 years ago in 2023, the idea of having the opposition candidates come together was also talked about, but that did not see the light of the day.
In 2011, they tried to do it on their side. It didn't work, and it worked in 2015. If it did not work in 2023, don't hold your breath. 2027 might be the day that everybody will say, enough. We have to rescue our country from these people.
Mr. Morka, you saw the former vice president there alongside former governor of Kaduna State. A coalition is coming after your president. Are you scared?
If I'm scared for what? Look, this is same old, same old. It's more of the same. These are individuals who are only, self-interested. The individuals, just look at the, leaders, opposition leaders who were gathered today at that meeting. These are literally people who just move around, forum shopping for a platform, at every political season. They're not serious-minded people. I'm sorry, but look, they can try, but I think that they are self-limiting people who will not even allow themselves to walk past the idea that they're proposing. So we're not concerned about what they do. They do what they do. We are busy doing exactly what we're elected to do. That's what the president is doing, and so we're not concerned with any coming together of Peter Obi or Atiku Abubakar or for that matter,
Mr. Morka, if you do some addition, if you add the votes Vice President Atiku Abubakar got and Labour Party candidate Peter Obi got, that's really more than what Mr. President won with in 2023. So are you really paying attention to the details?
Oh, completely. I mean, look, 2023 was 2023. 2027 will be 2027. You must understand that Nigerians are discerning people. They're not, locked into a frame that we are speaking to, not speaking to people. But the ordinary Nigerians are, different. Their own reality and their thinking is completely different from that of, Atiku Abubakar.
All right.
The circumstances of 2023 will be different in 2027, by which time Nigerians will be certain that that this president means well and is committed to transforming.
Good place to leave it, Mr. Morka. We've completely run out of time. Felix Morka is